Thank God, I'm a born-again Democrat.
Fob James, 44, an Opelika businessman, once claimed to be a Republican. Then he changed parties, and that point has been challenged by other Democrats running for governor. James, president of Diversified Products of Opelika, is running on a platform to emphasize a business approach to government with proposals to economize government, reform what he calls regressive tax structures, and redesign the Public Service Commission with a return to basics in education.
I think this state needs to move forward on all fronts, and I think in 1978, the new beginning that I speak of, and that has to do with what we've discussed here this evening, running the state of Alabama in the best interest of the people of the state of Alabama and not all of the special interest groups. Running the highway department, running the schools, the prison systems, throughout the whole operations in an efficient, effective, businesslike way. I believe that can best be accomplished in the vehicle of the Democratic Party of Alabama, and I am totally in accord with those principles.
Ray Bass, 45, had served longer in the post of State Highway Director than anyone in state's history. He resigned at the end of March to run his statewide campaign for lieutenant governor. Bass, raised in Geneva County, graduated from Auburn University with a civil engineering degree. He has served as county engineer for several counties, was appointed assistant highway director in 1971 and highway director in 1972 by Governor George Wallace.
I feel that I've gained a good understanding of some of the problems and some of the situations that we'll be faced with in the future. I feel that I know or have a good idea of the direction that this state should go. I've been involved in the development of the highway transportation system, or the transportation systems in general, during this period of time. I've come to realize the importance of this particular aspect of state government to the development of this state. Of course, education to me is still the most important function of state government. I think it's important that education be paid attention to, and in my opinion, education is not overfinanced in this state. I feel that there are areas of accountability that need to be corrected. I think that credibility needs to be reestablished. Of course, my number one problem when I'm elected lieutenant governor in this state will be a reorganization of the state Senate. I think it's very important that this be done.
Jamie Red Etheridge, the current mayor of Greenville, says he's seeking the lieutenant governor's office in the September 5th primary to put a gavel stop to high government spending. Etheridge said he wanted to attack some of the problems cities are having in dealing with the federal bureaucracy. Etheridge is the current president of the Alabama League of Municipalities. Etheridge says cities are hamstrung and are now fighting for survival. Etheridge says that he will campaign for more home rule legislation, lowering utility taxes, and reducing state spending.
Having served as mayor for several years in Greenville and in local government, seeing the problems that we have on the local level, legislation that comes to us mandated with no funding, also in the private sector, being a businessman and involved in construction business and knowing the regulations that we are having there, I can see the trend that's ever growing all across this state and across this nation with more and more government. I firmly believe in the Jeffersonian type of legislation where the least government is the best. I would be hopeful that we can begin to stop some of the growing trend of big bureaucracy, big government, because with that comes, of course, inflation, regulation, and all of that comes down to taxation, and that's where it's bothering us on the local level. So I think that we've got to get back to the basics, back to the hometown element, and being a mayor of a small town, I'm in contact with the people daily. I know what the problems are, and I can see the problems that are facing us across this state. And I firmly believe that we've got to go back to those basics, getting back to the real things of life, because I think we've taxed our people to the point of no return. People about ready to revolt about this taxation, and if we continue on, there's going to be no middle-class America anymore. The free enterprise is not going to be here, and of course that is the thing that has made this state and this nation what it is.
Robert Muncaster has spent the past 2.5 decades as an architectural, construction, and executive consultant. Muncaster has fought in many federal court battles on constitutional grounds. His personal anti-United Nations fight demanding a congressional declaration of war in Vietnam resulted in a court conviction and a 3-year prison sentence, which were both pardoned by the president. Muncaster is campaigning on 2 basic themes and a 10-point program. The themes are what he calls economic slavery and governmental oppression. Muncaster says if he's elected, he's not going to accept a salary for the term in office.
I believe it's no big thing for me to be willing to serve without a salary, and I'll point out that all of those benefits that accrue from the mansion fund, all the food I can eat, are tax-free, so that I would not be interested in accepting any taxable salary of $50,000 a year as the governor. I use that as an illustration that I intend to cut the taxes in a practical and reasonable way where I can, in things that are under my control, and that certainly will be one of the many things that would be under my control. I also have pointed out that all of the political opposition in this campaign appears to be set out to junk the Alabama Constitution and substitute a new one. I'm the only candidate that proposes to strengthen the Alabama Constitution, which we have, and make it better and make it serve the interests of the people better. And I've pointed out 3 specific ways that I intend to do that. 1, to in every way strengthen the individual liberties of our people. Secondly, to restore the separation of powers concept in government, so people in various state administrative bureaus cannot write their own laws and enforce their own laws and judge their own laws and rules and regulations against the best interest of our people. And third, I intend to demand one kind of law for all people, for all counties, and for all cities.
"28-year-old Bob Getty served as an aide to Senator John Sparkman for 4 years. He says the experience he got in Washington is one of his strongest qualifications for the job. He's highly critical of the current seat holder, Congressman Bill Dickinson. Getty says Dickinson has been ineffective, especially dealing with military matters. Maxwell Air Force Base and Fort Rucker are both within the 2nd District. One of Getty's major concerns is the rising inflation rate. He says it will take a certain type of person in the nation's capital to curb that rate.
I think it's going to take somebody who's going to try to come to grips with the problems of inflation. And we've got an inflation rate, the month of May, it was something like 11%. That's almost unbelievable. We've got to begin to solve problems like inflation. We've got to bring this federal budget in balance and start trying to cut out some programs. And these are programs that are good programs. A lot of them are. They're programs that a lot of people want. And it's going to take somebody tough enough who's got thick skin and who's willing to deal with some of these problems that we've got.
The teenaged mother is usually not mature enough physically to bear a normal child. Doctors say many offspring of adolescent mothers suffer brain damage. They say taxpayers end up paying support for a retarded child from the cradle to the grave. They say costs sometimes reach into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Dr. Roosevelt McCorvey says all that can be avoided with $3 worth of birth control pills each month. McCorvey also says adequate prenatal care is another answer if proper birth control methods and sex education courses are not effective to help curb teenage pregnancies. McCorvey says the main problem once again stems from pregnant children who are simply not developed physically enough to have a baby that is healthy. And many times, he says, the young mother also suffers serious health problems.
Some of the things that leads to brain damage in a kid that is 15 years old that's having a baby is prematurity and preeclampsia. These are diseases that are related to their age. These are mishaps of pregnancy that happen more often in these group of patients that will lead to some brain damage. It can lead to brain damage.
What kinds of funds are we talking about that would alleviate this problem, that you would buy equipment, and what kinds of equipment are we talking about?
Well, the funds necessary for the kinds of equipment is, I would think, probably in the range of $600,000-$700,000 to equip a good obstetric and neonatal unit.
In this area?
In this area. Now, this is not for the neonatologists, which may run up into $2 or $3 million to get a neonatal unit, but to have a good pediatric ward and a good equipped obstetrical ward with a good functioning, comprehensive approach to this problem, I would think you're talking in terms of $600,000-$700,000.
Okay, now, a young girl from 13 to, let's say, 18, if she becomes pregnant, what are the chances of her offspring having some kind of damage?
Well, I would say it's more than the lady who's in the optimum age group, which is 21 to 35. And I would think that it would be about, she would have a 2 to 5% chance of having some type of problem, either inherent because of her age of having a baby or because of some mishap in pregnancy that will lead to her baby having some difficulty.
What is the situation now in terms of these children getting the proper prenatal care in this community?
In this community, I think you could divide them up into different categories. You have the category wherein those that are able to pay do pay and get this kind of attention. And then you have the kind that can and do get assistance from Medicaid. And then you have the kind that are a little bit too well off to get Medicaid, but too poor to pay for what they really need. And this is a group that we are trying to address ourselves to. That group which is too well off to get on Medicaid, but too poor to actually pay for the cost of good prenatal care. And we have the Central Alabama Health Foundation that sponsors a clinic for these girls that try to help them along these lines.
This is a show walk. It's a slow, collected gait. The horse keeps his nose tucked. It's usually referred to as a stepping pace.
And Midnight Stroker has got his head up and his nose tucked in, and he's looking pretty good now.
It's a real smooth ride. It's comes about from only 1 foot being on the ground at a time. If it was in slow motion, you'd be able to tell. It's a little bit hard to visualize. Here we're going into a slow rack. It's an increase in speed, although it's not as fast as the fast rack. As you notice, the faster he goes, the higher he'll pick up his speed, although he keeps the same form at all times.
Notice how he throws his front feet. They seem to go out. The hooves seem to go out.
That's probably due to the weight that they carry on their front feet. They have some plastic pads that are used to make the action of the front feet.
Now you've moved it into the fast rack.
We're going a little faster here.
So those are the 3 basic gaits of the racking horse, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you have to do in the ring?
Right. That's what the judges look for, is a horse that can perform all 3 gaits. Some horses can only do 2 gaits. They like a horse that's consistent, one that picks their feet up a lot. Here we've dropped back into the show walk again, which is real important, to come from a fast rack back to a show walk.
And the horse is judged the whole time he's in the ring, right?
from the minute they come in, usually until the time they leave, until the time that the cards are handed in, they're judged on the 3 gaits, and they're also judged on conformation. They like a horse that with sloping shoulders, good straight neck, straight legs, just like quarter horse.
Attorney General Baxley says Rowe was interviewed by investigators from his office on numerous occasions during the probe of racial bombings in Birmingham. The Attorney General added that some of what the former FBI informant said may be true, but that the FBI appears to be getting some unfair blame in the situation.
We started out talking to Rowe early in the investigation, and some of the stuff he told us, we verified. A lot of it, we didn't. Some of it, we put him on a polygraph, put him on a lie detector, and he passed certain aspects of it and failed certain aspects. The end result of it was that he wasn't helpful because we could not verify near enough of what he said, so we just left him and started working other avenues on the case. I think the FBI is getting a bum rap, you know, about some of this national publicity. It's easy to play Monday morning quarterback and come back and say, well, they should have done this and they were instigating it. You've got to realize if the FBI had not infiltrated the Klan, the Weathermen, maybe the Black Panthers, or the whole board of terrorist organizations, and they would have inflicted a lot more harm on innocent people than they did. I'm not saying everything the FBI had those people do was right. Certainly hindsight may show that there was a lot of excesses, but by and large, a lot of bloodshed was stopped because the FBI got in these organizations on the right and the left and broke it up.
During our talk with Baxley, he said the bombing investigations are not over and there's much more to come in the form of indictments and trials.
As soon as we get Stoner back and try Stoner, then we're going to come right back with some more indictments against some others involved in that bombing.
So it's not over at all?
No, no, it's not over.
How many people are we talking about?
Oh, 2 or 3 more.
Anybody from South Alabama?
No.
Birmingham?
Yeah. And Texas.
Was Rowe ever put on a polygraph by your people?
Yeah, we're the ones. We put Rowe, see, our office, Norman, since I've been there, every time we get a witness like Rowe, we put him on polygraph. We check every witness we ever put on the stand out every conceivable way we can, and we put Rowe on, there's no telling how many hours we subjected him to these lie detector tests. Some things he'd pass them on, and some things he'd fail them on, and after he kept failing them, that's when we, on certain aspects, that's when we just moved on and quit fooling with him, went on another avenue.
The state's Competency Testing Committee reported that by the 78-79 school year, several school systems will be selected for a pilot program of the soon-to-be compiled test procedures. All categories of students will be selected for the pilot, which will determine what, if any, changes need to be made to ensure fairness.
We are not using standardized tests. We are identifying competencies before writing the test. The tests will be composed by our own teachers for use in the Alabama schools. We think if there were special tests composed for different categories of students, that this would be extremely biased.
How soon do you think it will be now before we see some tangible results of this testing in Alabama schools?
I think we're going to begin to see some tangible results real soon when the students know that they're going to be required to pass the competency test before they graduate. I think we're going to find some more motivation, and we may begin just very soon to see some improvement.
Another major point of emphasis in the report is the committee's desire to, as much as possible, keep the matter out of the hands of the legislature. Education officials claim that if a legislative committee were to enter the situation, so would politics, and a lot of the work that the current committee has done would be undone. From the State Department of Education, Bill Weaver, WSFA TV News.
It's filed in an effort to wind down the affairs of the bank, to compel an accounting for the funds that were entrusted to First Alabama Bank. As you may know, First Alabama Bank was the escrow agent for United Memorial National Bank. While United Memorial Bank was organizing, stock subscriptions were being deposited into First Alabama Bank. As the escrow agent for UMNB, First Alabama Bank acquired certain fiduciary duties. Our claim is that First Alabama Bank breached those fiduciary duties in permitting withdrawals of funds in the escrow account to Tyrone Gray. Approximately $50,000 was deposited in First Alabama Bank in an escrow account. All those funds have been depleted. Our investigation shows that the funds were withdrawn by Tyrone Gray under circumstances that were completely out of the ordinary when it comes to normal fiduciary banking responsibilities.
Is this what you are contending in your suit against First Alabama?
That is the basic contention, that a breach of fiduciary duty has occurred, that but for that breach, the funds would still be in the account, and we would not have over 300 subscribers who need to be refunded their subscriptions right now.
This operation is a monthly drill where the companies come out monthly and drill together in a group. This is what we call our TAC 1 operation. Generally at large fires we have a problem with the first-in companies not receiving enough water to accomplish their objective. This is using some new equipment, some new 5-inch supply hoses in three-way Siameses to enable support companies or companies that respond later on to support and give additional water to the first-in companies. This enables us to have shorter firefighting lines by using the attack companies and them having plenty of water there. This has been a couple of years in the making, and we've had it in existence now for about a year, and the companies train with it frequently. They're required to train it on this scale here about once a month, and we try to work the bugs out of it and get them so that when the time comes they can do it right.
Dark anyway, you can take it all right like this? Oh, yeah.
The $2 million project that has hampered some rush hour traffic for a couple of months now is said to be about 60% completed. Most of the work this week is centered near Jackson Hospital, where today one side of the bridge was completed and traffic was rerouted, once again causing some minor traffic congestion. But according to Jack Hartzog of the Highway Department's Construction Bureau, the headaches caused by the construction are just about over.
Between the eastern bypass and the route interchange, that's the 65-85 interchange, we should be through with those bridges on the interstate itself in 2 or 3 weeks.
Exactly what is being done there?
The main work that's being done is repairing the faulty bridge joints on all the bridges from the route interchange here in Montgomery all the way to the Lee County line.
What all does that involve?
It involves breaking back the concrete on each side of the joint, approximately 18 inches, replacing the old armor joints with new armor plates, and replacing the bridge seals.
There's also a lot of bridge construction work east of here on 85 between here and Auburn. What's the status on that?
The rural section of the project is really divided into 2 sections, the urban section from the eastern bypass back to the route interchange, and then the rural section. The rural section will probably be the controlling item of work. Work should go on there on to about March of next year.
Hey, going back to the in-town construction, have you incurred many problems as far as traffic goes? And I noticed you've had some of the bumps. I know there seem to be some problems there. What kind of feedback have you gotten from your office?
We've had some problems with people complaining about going over the steel plates there. These plates are necessary. They have to remain in place 3 or 4 days after the concrete's poured in order for it to take proper set before we can allow traffic to be on the concrete. And that's the purpose for the plates. Well, they have to be thick enough to bridge the joint completely and support the traffic going over it.
This is Dave Rickey, WSFA TV News reporting.
I would imagine, Emory, that the Democrat committee probably this afternoon received the challenge that was sent from Crenshaw County. And as soon as they receive it, they will refer it to the challenge committee, which is a subcommittee of the state committee. They will take the challenge into consideration, and they will consider what the Alabama Code says. And in 17-22-5, it is very clear that this violation of the Corrupt Practice Act is an automatic disqualification for any candidate. It is exactly the same if you did not pay your qualifying fee.
Okay, when did you first hear about or learn about your candidates failing to qualify?
I knew as of last Wednesday, which was the deadline for people filing of these Finance Committee reports, that neither of them had filed in Crenshaw County. I officially was told by the judge of probate yesterday in Crenshaw County.
About the challenge, could that have taken place in Montgomery County?
Emory, as I understand it, at least one of the candidates could have been challenged in Montgomery County, and let me point out, may still be, because any citizen can challenge up to the 21st day of July, which is this next Friday. One of them, as I understand, has a finance committee with 5 names listed on it, and he did not file that list of names with the probate judge of Montgomery County. He could be challenged on that ground. Yes, it is a violation of the code and of the Corrupt Practice Act.